In this lesson, we'll look at using relative positioning. When we control the layout of elements on our page using relative positioning, we use the position property which we saw when we looked at absolute positioning, but instead of using the word absolute as a value, we'll use the word relative as a value with a position property. The difference between relative positioning and absolute positioning is that in absolute positioning, we change the location of elements on our page based on where we wanted them to be with respect to the browser window. With relative positioning, we're going to make changes to the position of elements relative to their current location inside the web page. Otherwise said, we use absolute positioning for positioning our elements on our page, and we use relative positioning for nudging them without affecting the layout of the entire page. Let's take a look at how we do this by going in and taking a look in the project files in Chapter 8 and finding lesson _03 home and opening that up in our HTML editor and opening that same HTML page, lesson _03 home, in our web browser, which on my machine is Firefox, on yours might be Internet Explorer. And we see a page that looks very much like the page we were working on in the previous lesson. Now, what we want to do is I'm going to scroll down and take a look for a moment at our list items in this HTML page. And I can see we have links to 3 nebulas and one little typo here. I'm going to change that typo, nebula 01, to nebula 03, and save and refresh. I notice that because what I want to do is I'd like to consistently nudge these words that say image facts in maybe 20 pixels from the left to add an extra visual indicator that these image facts go with the nebula referenced by this link immediately above the words image facts. This would be a case of me selectively deciding to nudge elements on my page and do so consistently without changing the overall layout of the page. And I wish to shift these words, in this case image facts, over 20 pixels from the left because I think that might look good in this page. So let's take a look at how we use relative positioning. I'm going to switch back over to my HTML file and find the first reference to image facts, which I can see here and I'll highlight in blue. Now in this case, I'm going to use inline styles to assign my relative positioning to this element. We've seen that we can assign inline styles before using the style attribute, which I'll add to this opening anchor tag for this image facts link element. So I'll position that attribute after the first href attribute in this opening anchor tag. I'll position my mouse after that first attribute, type the spacebar on my keyboard, and type style equals quote quote. And since we know HTML doesn't care about white space in our files, I'm going to hit the return key on my keyboard and move that line over a little bit just so that it's easier for us to see. And I might even put those breaks down on their own line. Again, just to make the code easier to view. Now I have a style attribute, and in that style attribute we'll add the property which we used in the previous lesson when we were working with absolute positioning, that property being position, except this time, instead of absolute, we'll assign the value relative and type a semicolon. So by setting the position property to relative, we tell the web browser we are about to make a relative adjustment. Now we have to give the adjustment to the web browser. As with absolute positioning, I can use 4 properties, left, right, top, and bottom, to move my elements around relative from their current location. Since I wish to shift this link 20 pixels to the right from its current location, I'll use the left property to indicate from the left, shift this element 20 pixels to the right. and I'll type a semicolon as well. Now, I'll save this file and switch back over to my browser and hit reload, and I'm going to keep my eye on these words, image facts. When I reload, I can see that that link has shifted over 20 pixels to the right. Now, since we're using inline CSS, if you'd like to shift those other image facts links 20 pixels over to the right, you'd need to put this same inline CSS snippet inside each of the opening anchor tags for the other two image facts links. So if I switch back over to my HTML page, and I'll just expand the width of my page so that I can put these lines of code back on the same line, just because they look better on one line in a wider window, I think. A little easier to see. But since we've set up this style attribute correctly once, let's just copy and paste it. I'm holding down the Shift key on my keyboard and using my left and right arrow buttons to select this style attribute, and then with this style attribute selected, from the Edit menu I'll copy, or Command-C, Control-C on the PC, and paste this style attribute into the other two image facts links. And I'll just do this quickly for the other two, and save my file from the File menu, Command-S, Control-S on the PC, so that I can switch back over to my browser, hit the Reload button, and see all the image facts links shift over 20 pixels to the right.